So I think this was a good primer to start us off. We talked about, in the enterprise, some of the challenges. All of you are actually deploying solutions and have operations. And I think maybe the thing to start, and all of you have long histories working with AI. We know that AI is not a new thing. However, I do think that there's probably things that have happened in the last 2 years since ChatGPT came on the scene that have changed the work that you do. So maybe we start off just, tell me about a project that you've done in the last 2 years that you're proud of, that you're embarrassed by, that is significant in some way, and then we'll take it from there. We'll start with you, Mark.
Sure. Well, first, great to be here. Thanks for having us. So for Boeing, one point I want to make is, every company starts at a different starting point. We have 70,000 engineers and technologists. We've been doing AI work for a long time, everything from autonomous space flight and drones to satellites to factory automation. So you start from a pretty high level of sophistication. But if you want an example, I think we were 5 weeks into 2023 after OpenAI dropped ChatGPT on the world, and the CEO asked me, so what are we going to do with this? And a few months later, we came up with an agenda. And one of the things that struck us very quickly is that we had a whole wild west of people experimenting with ChatGPT in unsecure versions. Our biggest customer is the Pentagon. We have a lot of proprietary and classified confidential data. So we knew we needed a secure platform. So that was our first priority, and we partnered with Microsoft. And interestingly, the early internal thoughts were this could take us 6 to 9 months, but we did it in 10 weeks thanks to their help and a big swarm. And we got up and running what we call Boeing conversational AI. I can come back to why it's conversational versus generative. But we rolled it out to all 170,000 people. And according to Microsoft, it's one of the largest secure implementations of an LLM in the world.
Wow. Not bad. Tough fact to follow, Igor.
Okay. Look, I miss the punk rock days of AI when there were like 12 of us in a research conference and not 5,000 in a carnival.
Yeah.
So what happened a couple plus years ago? We had the AI industry that broke a bunch of taboos, right? Nonprofits suddenly became for-profits. They stole a mess of copyrighted content. They had an alignment problem where now these platforms were allowed to emit hallucinations, also known as lies. Let's see what else happened. You got baited to upload your sensitive information in there, not knowing that it was getting spilled to overseas contact centers and things of that sort. And then because everybody's getting baited that this is on the path to AGI, people start thinking it's divine. The scientists start saying use it for mental health support, and it starts triggering suicides. So that's what actually happened in the last 24 months. So some of us that have been working in enterprise AI, like the 3 participants here, are like, okay, enterprise AI requires accuracy, scale, security, and speed. And for many, many years, we started working on more serious constructs so that we can support, in our cases, things like Air Force, things like we're the AI for strategic intelligence for the World Economic Forum, we're the knowledge cloud behind NVIDIA, and things of that sort. The things that actually run the lights, critical infrastructure, and things of that sort. So I think AI got splintered into 2 different worldviews, and that's what you're going to see over the course of the succeeding years.
Mesh.
So, it's fascinating for me. Unifor, my company, has been in the business of AI for 16 years, and much like folks on the stage, we've seen this industry evolve, we've seen the AI models evolve. And the transformers concept came out in 2018, so there were several of us already on the transformer-based AI model architecture. So in that sense, almost nothing changed 2 years ago. But on the flip side, from a vantage point where we today have over 1,500 enterprise clients, over 750,000 users, our entire business as a provider of end-to-end AI solutions to these enterprises shifted. And there are 2 key trends that I want to talk about that have emerged in the last 2 years that did not exist even the year prior. First, I call it the revenge of the CIO. In the era of SaaS, in the last 2 decades, each one of us selling SaaS solutions were trained, and we trained our go-to-market machines to sell to business. Marketing department, sales department, HR departments, each one solving their own needs with some form of AI or machine learning-based SaaS software. Now, AI is a centralized architecture subject. We just heard from Mark, the CEO called him. Not every company has a Mark, so it goes defaulted to the CEO. But there is a centralized authority in each enterprise emerging who, whether it's coming from the board or the CEO, is now responsible for all things AI. And in relation to that, AI stopped being a point solution SaaS, and AI is now a company-wide architecture. Because the company cannot afford to have several different corporate guardrails, several different strategies of LLM partnership. These are expensive moves, so it has to be a corporate strategy. And so the new architecture that's emerged in the enterprise, I call it the 4-layered cake. And it could be edible for some, but this layer cake starts with a data lake. This is where the enterprise stores its data, and there has been an acceleration in the last couple of years for enterprise to bring all their data in one place. We've seen results from Databricks, Snowflakes. Those companies are playing in that zone. The layer right above is the knowledge lake, where this is the first layer where Gen AI gets to be applied, but now on the data. So Gen AI, using concepts like retrieval augmented generation, is starting to make data more searchable, all right? So that's the knowledge lake. It becomes the knowledge of the entire enterprise, which then starts to fine-tune LLMs or other forms of AI models. And after a few months of early experimentation, just like we heard from Mark, each one of Unifor's customers, whether it's a telecom company, a bank, an insurer, they first thought they all will have like one big LLM fine-tuned for the company. Almost the whole world's enterprises are beginning to realize it's going to be a bunch of small models and not large. So the layer right above the knowledge lake becomes a model lake, because you're going to have tens or hundreds of these small models, each one functionally trained for marketing needs, HR needs, billing needs, customer record needs. So the model lake is the layer where these gets orchestrated. And finally, the layer on top, which is where the rubber hits the road, which is where the ROI is, which is where the users interact with AI, is the AI agents, which is the new way of saying AI apps, or what used to be SaaS in the past. So this 4-layered cake has emerged as this architecture, putting the power back in a centralized authority, CIO in most cases. And that's a huge shift in the way enterprises are consuming AI in the last couple of years.
Wow. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that model. It just seems, the promise that I hear is that these solutions can run across an entire business. And instead of getting your CRM from Salesforce, your Workday application, your Office productivity suite, you're creating solutions that can do kind of all of these things. Is that what we're talking about here? This knowledge base that everybody can tap into?
Oh, everything's going to become obsolete. So I used to lead the AI team at IBM. We discovered the baby version of Watson over 20 years ago. They didn't want to greenlight it. I departed, did my last startup. It turned into Alexa. So Brian was Alexa's code name, by the way. Alexa's my older sister's name. If I asked you this question, do you have a non-disclosure agreement signed with me or not? Guess what? You already know the answer to that. It popped in your head. Guess what's not in your head? A Salesforce license or a DocuSign license. So I think where this stuff is going to go is that everything's going to get dumped into a central repository, and you won't care that it's structured, semi-structured, unstructured information. And at a split second that you need something from it, it'll actually come, filter, and give you exactly what you need based on the authorities that you have, access control, zero trust, and things of that sort. It's going to completely disrupt what you know as an ERP, a CRM, ITSM, and things of that sort. That's where it's going. By the way, somebody once asked me, what's the future of speech recognition? Because we were involved in early Siri, Alexa, and things of that sort. And I said, you not saying anything. And I'm like, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you saying anything is going to become an exception. Because once you have things like your healthcare devices and things like that saying right now, you need to have water, they'll change the menus, it'll bring you the perfect things that you need to eat, book you to the perfect thing, the right car is waiting for you, the perfect flight. You never have to do anything again. That's all the agentic stuff that's going to be coming over time.
Well, I'll add, Igor made some good points, but I always like to make an audience like these things real. So let's pick a few examples. How many here have read the press release from Klarna in the last year or so? So Klarna is this buy now, pay later company out of Sweden. And they made 3 very significant media announcements in the last year or so. The first one, they said they were able to take OpenAI, use their company's knowledge, train OpenAI, and replace 100% of their customer service representatives. 100%, right? all 700 people. So that was an interesting announcement. They followed it up a few months later by saying they have turned off all the licenses in the company of Salesforce and Workday, not to replace it with competing products, but to replace it with a fine-tuned version of the same OpenAI on the company's knowledge. And then they came out with the cherry on the cake. They said the result of all of these activities in the last year is that Klarna went from making a $44 million loss the year prior to $66 million profit in 1 year swing. And they attributed all of that to AI delivering efficiencies in departments, AI delivering efficiency in replacing that SaaS software layer. What have we seen in the world as a reaction? Salesforce now wants to call itself Agentforce. Our customers, whether it's a telecom company or a bank or an insurance company, are doing similar initiatives in-house to replace a bunch of predictive analytics software and Copilot software, which used to be sold by SaaS companies in the past, by in-house knowledge-trained LLMs, replacing each of those workflows one after the other. And we all know how these dominoes fall. All it takes for Wall Street is one major Fortune 500 coming out and saying what Klarna said. Klarna is still private. The minute we see one large bank, one large insurer, one large telecom company report a similar earnings message, that they increase EBITDA by 10% because of AI replacing some software or headcount, the dominoes start to fall. And I can tell you, being in this field, that we are not years away. We're months away from these announcements beginning to come.
Look, I'll just add to that. I think, one, it depends how broadly you think about AI, right? So AI has been around for decades. It's delivered tremendous economic value, right? We talked earlier about fraud detection, everything that we see in social media with algorithms, search engines. It's everywhere. So there's a lot of chatter always about, is AI going to create value? Well, it's already created a tremendous amount of value. So it's really, to me, it's about this new class of generative conversational tools that are game-changing, one. Secondly, I also think starting position, again, is everything. I've been in two recently, over the last 15 years, two big global companies with a 100-year history, Nielsen and Boeing, tremendous legacy debt, tremendous silos, data everywhere. And I always say, there's three things that you'll find in every big global matrix company that nobody owns, and that's people, money, and data. Finance doesn't own the money, HR doesn't own the people, and everybody's got data everywhere, and sometimes it's in millions of spreadsheets. So there's a vision of putting it all together, but the reality is often far from that vision in many companies. And yet you can get a lot of value out of all those different data sets and all those different applications to drive value. And the final point I would make, again, I'll use Boeing, over 4,000 enterprise applications, probably another 6,000 engineering applications. One thing I'm seeing and what I predict is there is a conversation right now where there's software and then there's AI, and the reality is they're going to blend. And eventually, it's all just intelligent software. You're not going to know anymore, is this an AI tool or a non-AI tool? It's all getting intelligent. Every single enterprise software company is building AI into it. We heard from Microsoft at the beginning of the day, they're all in. But again, so is Oracle, Workday, SAP, Salesforce. So if you just think forward into a world where all software is intelligent, all software is AI enabled, there's still a lot of experimentation going on. I think you're going to see a tremendous amount of innovation. But I think it's only going to be smaller, very focused companies that can really pull off a truly integrated data warehouse anytime in the near future. Most of them are going to have to deal with a huge spread of complexity.
Got it. It's interesting. It brings up this idea. We see the big tech companies making massive investments. Obviously, the big tech players are going to be on the field, but then there's smaller companies, startups. Everybody's got .ai after their name now. Like, how are the smaller companies going to compete against the larger companies? Does AI and the demands that it requires in terms of financing, in terms of energy, and talent, tip the scales? So, Igor, how do you see the AI landscape in terms of delivering enterprise solutions?
Yeah. When I started my last company, I put model ships in front of my office as a way of broadcasting our culture. One of them was Titanic. because I'm like, big tech is going to claim that they're unsinkable and they're going to get to these topics before we get to them. There's two ways to make an organism. You either drop it in the rainforest with plenty of food and water, or you drop it in the desert and they adapt differently, more compute efficiency and things of that sort as well, with necessity being the mother of invention. So I think big tech's going to do their big tech thing, and I think startups are going to do their thing, and there's going to be interesting discoveries on both sides. And by the way, don't be afraid of these technologies. I know it's easy to think that there's a race to the bottom and people are going to be, jobs are going to get disrupted. You know how many jobs are going to be lost? Zero, nothing. People fetishize reducing costs and things of that sort.
Mesh just said 700 people lost their jobs at Klarna.
In the short term. In the short term, okay? You're going to have low unemployment still. Everybody's going to be expecting you to be 10 to 100 times more productive. That's what's going to happen. Otherwise, it's two farmers standing at their fence and saying, hey, my horse can eat 50% less oats than yours. And they keep dropping the amount of oats. Next thing you know, the horse dies, meaning your organizations die. Humans are still the center of innovation, creativity. My parents are both artists. Remember what artists give you. They give you what you need, not what you want, typing into prompts. All of your phones have cameras on it. It did not make Steven Spielberg obsolete.
All right.
I'll just go back to your
ahead.
point on startups with all the new .ai. Yeah. To me, that's no different than 25 years ago, everybody being .com, right? So we don't do that anymore. Same thing, I think, is coming with AI. It's just embedded.
In terms of the timeline, Mesh says this is happening in months. Igor seems pretty bullish. I mean, how do you see it?
Yeah, it's happening right now. Again, you cannot walk into any enterprise software, any technology company, and not see their AI roadmap. So if you just fast forward and just assume it's an embedded capability, then you get back to what you're really trying to solve for, which what are the business problems? What are the challenges? What are we trying to do to drive performance? And this is a tool.
Is there any advice you would give to companies that are, because you've heard stories about companies that during the beginning of the hype cycle spent all this money on AI solutions that actually didn't move the needle at all, and they cost a fortune to build, they cost a fortune to maintain, but they were misaligned with their goals. Is there any advice you can give to business owners how to avoid that and go straight to achieving real results?
I'll just start on let my colleagues weigh in, but I'll just say for us, what's been illuminating with Gen AI. Again, I'll contrast it. There's enough people here who remember the internet. The internet came out, there was a tremendous amount of hype and promise, but the technology wasn't ready. The infrastructure wasn't there, the data wasn't there. It took a long time. I think it's the opposite with Gen AI and conversational. The technology is ready out of the box. The hardest investment is with the people, is actually teaching people how to use the tools, drive adoption. The technology itself is not that expensive, except for a few specific applications, but generally the ROI is tremendous, but you have to really invest in people more than anything.
Igor, you agree with that?
10 years before you had an Amazon Echo in your kitchen, we hid it in Disney World and Epcot Center to see how children would react to it because they're little Imagineers. So the point is, I don't know how long it'll take, but the point is there's been these little experiments brewing, you know, in some cases right under your noses where you didn't realize it was that style of technology. I know that you read the Wall Street Journal every day and your C-suite, you know, talks to your boards, talks to your investors, and everybody's like panicking how to do the big mission stuff. And you know what I say? Release it to the interns. We don't know what use cases are going to actually trigger and change the course of history that tend to be more accidental. The good news with this technology now is the cost basis went down as you can take more shots on goal on that creativity.
You want the last word?
So, look, I'd say it's very important to realize that this snapshot of time, 5, 10 years from now, as we look back at this time, how will we remember this moment where AI was unfolding? I don't think we remember this moment by the products we were building, the models we were training, or the companies we were building. We remember this moment by thinking about what did we do now that put society in a better place for adopting this transformational technology. And I think while we are in this infrastructure build-out phase, which is why hyperscalers, right now we see a lot of action with NVIDIA chips and hyperscalers and data centers, But just like the internet, Cisco became the world's most valuable company in the early 2000s when there was the internet build-out phase. We needed networking before internet could take off. But where did the real value get created? Applications like Google, like YouTube, like Uber, like Salesforce. And that's going to be no different in the AI era. So there is a startup that we may know of right now or don't know of right now will become the large cap company with AI. But to wrap things in a bow here, even as we speak, we are crossing the chasm with early adopters. And here's what early adopters look like. I want to leave the group with one other example so we all walk away knowing what's happening today, not in the tech company space, but in the enterprise space. We are all telecom consumers. We all receive a telecom bill every month. How many of us today can read our telecom bill and explain it to our spouses or our grandparents? Nobody. You know how many calls our favorite telecom company, AT&T or Verizon, get every day just for people asking, why did I get this $4 extra or $5 extra? Over 100 million calls between those two. Over 100 million every month. And so a telecom company has just put a billing SLM, small language model, trained on their billing methodology into production and said, look, historically, with over 5,000 people, we haven't been able to solve this problem. We run analytics software. We have 5,000 people in our call center just picking up those phones and answering, why did you get $5 extra? We now have a billing SLM that's trained to answer not only the best question about billing, but also it's an agentic workflow. So if you're a loyal customer and if you're really calling to find out why that $5 extra, we'll tell you, but we'll also reverse it one time. The impact of this billing SLM, you don't need 5,000 people in the call center anymore. That doesn't mean, I'm with Igor, that doesn't mean that we are going to stare at massive job losses. The AI companies that are building these solutions need a lot of manpower. The need of the hour, and this is where the role of government and corporate citizens becomes really important. If we know what we know now, we should be aggressively reskilling our workforces. We should be focusing on education to make sure the next generation of graduates that are coming out are trained to work on the side of AI as opposed to traditional jobs. The cost of not doing it is a societal imbalance. So it won't be just the country that has access to the best GPUs or LLMs that's going to win the race. US in the lead right there. But it will be countries that come up with better policy for wealth redistribution, reskilling in the era of AI, and which is why I go back to, when we look back at this time, it won't be about the best LLM, the best technology. It'll be about what were we doing to put policies in place that 10 years from now, we'll be proud of how the world adopts AI.
Well said. Well, one takeaway, definitely don't go to work in a call center. I think that's one takeaway we all agree on. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This is great.